Apologies for an abrupt break there. My phone got full. There's a real learning curve here with all of this wonderful technology and how we're working this. So thanks for bearing with me. So I was just saying about some of Byron's other characters. Somebody like Manfred, who we don't quite know what he's done, but he's immensely suffering and repenting. And even kind of Childe Harold, we can kind of see really just bearing this huge burden of tragedy, and just kind of struggling on manfully, silently, stoically. This is really kind of the precursor to characters in the Gothic novels like Jane Eyre, like Rochester. But Juan, certainly in this narrative, is really quite sweet. He's quite naive. He's very passive. So he falls for Donna Julia. She's a married woman, so she kind of knows what's happening very sweetly. Juan doesn't really have much idea what these feelings are he's having for this attractive older lady. But she shows him pretty quickly. So they start to have this affair. And we end with this kind of very, very amusing, very dramatic paced scene, which I think is partly also the rhyme scheme that it really carries you on. It keeps you going. But we end with this very dramatic scene in which Don Alfonso, who is Donna Julia's husband, comes into the bedroom, trying to catch the young couple in the act. And she's just sitting there. She's like, "How dare you? This is an outrage!" And they hunt the whole house. They hunt the whole room, searching high and low. And Don Juan is hiding in the bed. Stalkers, and they think they've gotten away with it. And the husband leaves. Everybody leaves, and at last, Juan is revealed. And thank goodness. Okay, you'd better go. But then the husband comes back in, and this time he sees the shoes, and he goes, "Hang on a second." And Juan is exposed. And so the last that we see of him in this canto is of him jumping out the window and running away. And that is a kind of a very famous scene that gets parodied a lot, and to an extent that I think people have often kind of forgotten where it comes from. This idea of the lover escaping through the window while the husband is furious. And so what, He's a very young man at this point. He's only I think he's only 16 at the end of it. He might be 17, but he's sent off traveling. Going, oh, okay, this was very embarrassing. Julia is sent to a nunnery and pretty much forgotten, I'm afraid. I mean, for Canto 2, Juan is pretty much in love with her still, and how so sad that they're separated. But he meets some new ladies. It's fine. So she kind of really loses here, although she's gotten away from Don Alfonso, and that doesn't sound like a bad thing. But she kind of loses. She gets sent to the nunnery, and he gets sent traveling. That is the way. when men and women fool around, men get sent off on adventures, and women get locked in a nunnery. Interesting moral lesson here. But what I kind of want to, where I want to kind of round this up with, is that the narrator comes back in. Juan kind of fleeing off, Juan facing an adventure as yet unknown. And the narrator comes in at the end to kind of say, well, lots of people are going to think that this is an immoral narrative about an immoral person. And it's absolutely not. Like, go and read it again. It's funny. It's entertaining. It's gay. It's a lovely story. And so on one hand, he kind of goes, no. Look more carefully. You'll see it's fun. And then he goes, but also actually, later in the story, I'm going to show what happens to wicked people who behave as wickedly as Don Juan does. And I think he says it's Canto 12. He's going to show what happens to those who live this kind of sinful life. He doesn't. If you get to Canto 12... everybody's forgotten about that promise, and Byron is well aware of it, and so he just carries on with the adventures of Juan, seducing and having this marvelous life that he does. So, to kind of round up this, Byron in general, but particularly this poem, I think this poem is really unique in this module. It's not like what we think of when we think of romanticism. And as we kind of saw with the things that I talked about at the beginning, yes, Byron can do that. He can do mountains and lakes and Loch Nagar and how beautiful that is. Um, but he does it with a very different angle. There's much more character, there's much more adventure, um, there's much more sex. And I think he has a strange place in the romantic canon. Um, yes, he has this individuality, and perhaps slightly differently to the others, it's much more performed, it's much more kind of thinking about how he's going to sell, how people are perceiving him. Um, and also, like, there's a great dualism in Byron. Like, on one hand, he's very casual and blasé, but on the other hand, he kind of wants people, he does want to be liked. He's kind of saying, it will depend on what the public think. And, he's half the time saying, oh, that doesn't matter, and then half the time saying it does. So you have to take everything he says with a pinch of salt. Because he does admire Wordsworth at various different points in his life. He says, actually, this is great. And he loves Coleridge, but also bashes them at the beginning because he's unhappy with an awful lot of what they're doing. So a peculiar kind of poet for a romantic poet, but somebody who's so much fun. Like, enjoy these poems. Don't worry about every single line. When you come across things you don't understand, there are loads of references to contemporary people, to classic texts. Glide over them. He doesn't necessarily mean you to get every single thing. Just enjoy the story, because it is ridiculous and it is larger than life and it is a lot of fun. So that is Byron. I hope you enjoy him. He can be a little bit daunting when you're starting out, but dive into something like Don Juan and have a bit of fun with him. So yeah, really looking forward to hearing what you all have to say about him, and enjoy.